Shalom, dear friends. Happy Wednesday and happy Passover. At the end of today, at sunset, begins a week-long celebration of the holiday Passover. If you are unfamiliar with this, I would suggest that you look it up. I'm going to fill the description of this video with other videos, just explaining all the details of Passover. Also, in our Christian tradition, this would be the night that we would celebrate that Jesus had the Last Supper. It's what we call the Last Supper, but it really was a Passover meal. And that is happening right now around the world tonight at sunset. So it'll be a wave because of the time changes throughout the world. It will be a wave of Passover beginning. And so tonight is a really special night. And ironically, the meaning or the hidden meaning behind everything is not lost on me. I believe that God planned this last week of my life incredibly to every detail, including the fact that my mom, she passed away last week, and it has been a hard and long week. And at the same time, I was actually studying the last week of Jesus's life and his last mission. All the teachings that he wanted to get out before he passed away. And now here we are in our Bible study on the Last Supper and the preparations for the Last Supper. And ironically, my mother's viewing is tonight from 5 to 7 as the sun sets here in Idaho in Mountain Time. And tomorrow, the first full day of Passover, which is normally a kind of a Shabbat, a Sabbath. They do a holy day, the first day of Passover, and they treat it like a Shabbat or a Sabbath. And that will be the day that we say our official goodbyes to my mom. Not saying that this is connected to Jesus and his death, but the symbolism in Passover is not lost on me. It is a walk through freedom. It's a walk through healing and restoration, and that God is walking with us, that he's with us in our tears. There are so many symbolisms here in Passover that I have really enjoyed as my family that was broken, severely broken, has come together and healed. And in a very tragic time, ended up, it's amazing, all the little details that God did to take care of us. And we were able to say our goodbyes to my mom and let her know as she was taking her last breaths that we're going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. I will do another video just on my mom and all of that later when I can fully wrap my head around it. But today, even though my family, I need to be out the door here for all of the siblings to practice what we're going to do for our speech at her funeral tomorrow and get the last details done. But it was really important for me to get on here because I had this week planned out that I wanted to have a video on all the important days, and that was Palm Sunday, and on the first day of Passover, which is the Last Supper, and Good Friday, and of course Resurrection Sunday. I want to have a video for each of those, and so I'm trying to fit them in, and I apologize that I don't have as much study and detail and things written down, but it's all floating around in my head. And so we're going to do our best. And I would ask you, all my dear friends, that as I just kind of read through this and say a few of the things that are off the top of my head, whatever I'm missing, all the little details of Passover, all the little details of the Last Supper, if you know something, please put it comment in the comments. Help me out with more research in this area, and that way we can come together and have a full video with comments that have all of the neat symbolism of Jesus's last meal, which happened to be on Passover. So let me quickly tell you what Passover is, and then I'll go ahead and read our passage today. So Passover is starts, if you want to read, in Exodus. I don't have where it's found right now. If you guys know, put it in the description, but you'll go to Exodus about the time when Moses he sees the burning bush, and then God sends him to Egypt to let the Israelites free from 400 years of slavery. And then there are the plagues, where God is trying to get Pharaoh to let his people go. And he has all the different plagues, and he gets down to the last plague. And the last plague is all of the firstborn males in that area would die, including Pharaoh's son. And if the Jewish people did not do this ceremony, then they would lose their firstborn son as well, because the death angel was going to sweep through Egypt. So Moses was instructed by God, and then Moses went to tell the people that they needed to sacrifice a lamb and then put his blood across the door frame. That would tell the angel not to come into that house. And they did certain things that have been passed down generation to generation, to kind of as a symbol of God releasing people from their prison, their slavery. And this is such a neat holiday because we are all enslaved by something. Unless you are completely and utterly in God's presence, there's always something that's trying to put you into slavery and into a prison. And so it's a great time to think about what is enslaving you, what is imprisoning you, and that God promises that he will set you free. And even here on earth, you can have a taste of that freedom, and you can have a taste of that deliverance. And all you have to do is turn your life over to Christ and say, God, I want to follow you. Show yourself to me. I believe that Jesus died for my sins. I repent of all of these horrible things I've done, or all of these sins. Please come and fill me and walk me through this healing process to get to freedom. And my word in 2021, I have a word of the year, was freedom. And I studied a lot of this where God releases. And it's so neat that Passover is a symbol of that. And it's also neat that the symbolism that Jesus was walking through is that he was going to be that sacrificial lamb. So of course we have, let me tell you some of the symbols in Passover. And maybe down the road I can do a better video of this when I'm not grieving and trying to put together a funeral for my mom. But there are some symbols in the Passover dinner. If you have a chance to go to a Passover dinner, I totally encourage you to go, because inside of this little dinner is all the symbols that some of the traditional Jewish people do not realize is these are symbols of Christ. You have the cheroset, which is an apple. It's chopped apples, and often has nuts, and it has wine or sometimes grape juice in it. It has, there's all these recipes that you can get online for making this. And it's basically meant to be like the mortar that held the bricks together, because when the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, they actually were making bricks and having to build, and they were like slave labor. And so this reminds the Jewish people now of their ancestors, of the hard slave labor. So the apple cheroset actually represents that. So that's part of the plate that they can remember their ancestors. And then there's matzah. And that has that has some really deep meanings that you've got to look up. I'm going to try to do as many as I can think of. The bread itself is unleavened. They do not, this entire week, eat anything with any leavening. That's yeast, baking soda, anything that would make it rise. And the reason is because when they were leaving, they were told not to put any yeast in, not even to wait for their bread to leaven, because basically God was going to set them free. And so they needed to just kind of grab their bread before it even got leavened and cook it and bring it on the road. And so it was flat, unleavened bread, and so that's why they eat that all year long. And also the leavening Jesus spoke of over and over again. Maybe some of you guys can put some of the places that you can find that in the Bible for me. I appreciate that if you guys can put those in the comments. But Jesus spoke often about the leavening being sin, or being like the leaven of the Pharisees was, or the yeast of the Pharisees was basically that their bad attitudes against Jesus were starting to spread like yeast spreads. And so that's a symbol of that. Also, when you see a traditional matzah cracker, it's pierced, just like Jesus was pierced. It's got the holes. It's striped with the way it's baked, just like Jesus had our stripes when he was whipped at the cross. There's just so many, and he had no sin. It has no yeast, and yeast is a symbol of sin, and so it has no yeast. He had no sin when he died. Look those up, guys. So good, so good. On that plate is also a roasted egg, and in some of the things you're going to see, a roasted egg is it's a symbol of the festival of sacrifice, and it supplemented the Pesach lamb. So it was kind of like usually if you were poor and you couldn't afford, in the Old Testament, God had provisions that if you were poor, you didn't have to come up with a piece of livestock that would cost you so much money. In Jesus's time, they could even do a pigeon instead of a lamb, or a pigeon instead of another kind of sacrifice. So there were different kinds of sacrifice, but Jesus always made amends for those that were poor. But also, the egg, if you notice, also represents new life, spring, and rebirth. You know, in this egg, the chick comes out. There's so many other symbolisms. The Trinity is in the egg as well. We know that too. So that would be a fun research if you want to do that today or tomorrow, and this week, as we're beginning the 7 days of Passover. There's a roasted shank bone from a lamb, which is also symbolized that sacrifice, that Jesus was the sacrifice for us, so that the death angel would pass us by and we could have eternity with him. So much symbolism there too. They also eat bitter herbs, and we dip them in like horseradish sauce, and it's to make it bitter and yuck. It's to remind us of the bitterness of being the Israelites being in bondage and slavery. And the whole Passover meal really symbolizes, and it visualizes, and it gets all your senses involved in the bitterness and the bondage and the slave labor, so that you understand what God has released us from. Until you realize your sin, and until you realize your bondage and your slavery, you aren't going to realize how important that being set free from that slavery is. And so you also have to take on the bitterness and look at your sin, and look at the all the things that maybe you have gone wrong. But then that sacrifice, that blood over the door, covers it all, and it's washed away, and you are delivered, and you no longer have to to think about it. You no longer have to feel guilty about it, because it's the sacrifice, Jesus' sacrifice, is a one and done. These sacrifices that they did in the Old Testament, every year they had to do them. Every month they had to do them. They were always having to do them. But when Jesus died on the cross, it was a one and done. All you have to do is just reach out to him, and he wipes it all away. So then we also have 4 cups of wine in the Passover, and they symbolize the 4 promises of redemption. And the first one is, I will bring forth. That's God saying, I will bring forth. The second cup is, I will deliver. God's going to deliver you. The third cup is, I will redeem you. And the fourth cup is, I will take you. And it's believed that the cup that Jesus, at the Last Supper, that he was saying, take this cup and remember me, was the third cup, I will redeem you, because he is the blood that will redeem. And then also they have salt water, and it's representing the tears. I also read that it represents the Red Sea that was parted. This is such a wonderful holiday. Jesus celebrated this holiday. I'm going to add another video in there of the history of why Christians nowadays do not celebrate Passover, because the Catholic Church banned it, and it's sad, because they didn't want to have anything to do with the Jewish church, because they felt like they are the ones that crucified Jesus. But what we don't realize is the Jewish heritage, if we are adopted into it, it is still our heritage. And the Jewish heritage was Jesus's heritage. And it has so much important stuff we need to learn. There are Christians around the world waking up to needing to celebrate the Passover. They're realizing, why have we not celebrated this our whole lives? My entire life, I never heard of the Passover until my adult life. Why was this hidden from us? And I feel like the enemy did that, because this Last Supper that Jesus was eating was more symbolic and deeper than we ever understood. Yes, we still have communion. Yes, we still think about the Last Supper. But what if we were to follow the Passover and really see the symbolism in everything that God promised hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus even walked on earth? He promised his people that he would send the ultimate lamb to be sacrificed. And Jesus fulfills everything in Passover. So today I wanted to read you the kind of Last Supper. And I was trying to figure out which one. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't know if I can do the fancy put words on the screen today. I don't have time for that. So replay this if you need to hear it. Maybe I'll put it in the description as I'm driving around. I'll be typing it on there. Matthew 26, 20 to 30. You're going to find some of this Passover, Last Supper area. Mark 14, 10 through 26. Luke 22, 7 through 30. John 13, 1 through 20. And I don't know which one to read, because I'm trying my best to, I read them this morning, and I'm having a hard time with my memory. Everything's really, really foggy with my mom's death and all the details that we've been trying to pull together. And I'm tired. But maybe I'll just do it in Luke. But read all of those, please, and see all the different details. So let's see, our Luke one is 22, 7 through 30. So the disciples prepare for the Passover. Then came the day of unleavened bread, on which the Passover lamb had been sacrificed. You've got to research that. It's so awesome. Jesus sent Peter and John, saying, "Go and make preparations for us to eat the Passover." "Where do you want us to prepare for it?" they asked. He replied, "As you enter the city, a man carrying a jar of water will meet you." Which, there's some really neat things there, because usually it was the women carrying the jars and getting the water. So this little detail, don't miss these details. Follow him to the house that he enters and say to the owner of the house, the teacher asked, where is the guest room where I may eat Passover with my disciples? He will show you a large room upstairs, all furnished. Make preparations there. They left and found things just as Jesus had told them. So they prepared for Passover. When the hour came, Jesus and his apostles reclined at the table. And he said to them, I have eagerly desired to eat Passover with you before I suffer. For I tell you, I will not eat it again until it finds fulfillment in the kingdom of God. After taking the cup, he gave thanks and said, take this and divide it among you. For I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God comes. And he took the bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, this is my body given to you. Do this in remembrance of me. Now remember, he's going through, we get such a small snippet of this, but he is actually sitting and going through the Passover dinner. And when he gets probably to the third cup, because it makes the most sense, he lifts that third cup of wine up and says, this is my body, because that third cup is what the I will redeem you cup. So he's lifting that cup up and says, this is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. And so that's why it's so important. Yes, we do communion, but it's so important for us as Christians to go back and start celebrating this Passover meal. In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup saying, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which I poured out for you. But the hand of him who is going to betray me is with me on the table. The Son of Man will go as it has been decreed. But woe to that man who betrays me. So he knows he's eating the Passover meal with Judas right here. He's eating with his biggest enemy or to come, and basically eating with Satan here, at least in Judas. They began to question among themselves which of them might want to do this. A dispute rose among them of which was considered to be the greatest. Isn't that crazy that here he's about to die? He's trying to get them to understand the symbolism, and they roll right into a discussion about who's the greatest. The King of the Gentiles, Lord over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. But you are not to be like that. Instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. For who is greater than the one who is at the table than the one who serves? It is not the one who is at the table, but I am among you as one who serves. You are those who have stood by me in my trials, and I confer on you a kingdom, just as my Father conferred one to me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in the kingdom and sit on thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, read the other passages too, because I believe he also in one of them says that he gets the bread, which is going to be an unleavened bread. It's going to be like a matzah cracker, or just like a flat naan bread, or something that doesn't rise. And he's going to break that, and he's going to say that this is my body broken for you. So the matzah, or the unleavened bread, is the symbol of his body. The wine is the symbol of his blood. The lamb is a symbol of his sacrifice that covers us with his blood, so that the death angel passes us by. So much symbolism, guys. Just go ahead and just do some study, do a deep dive, look in I'll put as many videos as I can today in the comments. But I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about this? Read the ones in Matthew and Mark. I think they say something about the bread. I think I wanted to read the one in John. And the reason is John is a beautiful, if you are a first-time believer, study the book of John, because John is the love chapter, or the love, the love book in the Bible. John speaks of his I am statements, of how he loves us, how he takes care of us, how he's the door, all of that. And in chapter 13, 1 through 20, so John 13, 1 through 20, he does the Last Supper, but he does it a little different. And you know what? I'm just going to let you guys read that because I'm running out of time and I got to get going. But it's such a beautiful thing from 1. I actually think you got to go farther. I put 1 to 20. I think you got to go to 30, 1 to 30. I'm going to write that down so if I jot it down, and to hear his words, just comforting people in his last hours, and everything. So thank you all for putting up with me and my unplanned kind of mess of videos, but I thought it's important. My mom dying this week has got me actually deeper in a thought process. And this stuff has been so rich. And one of the things about my mom is that she kind of was single-minded. She found Jesus. She decided to follow Jesus when she was young. And she never strayed from that. No matter what people said, no matter who she hurt along the way, sometimes her words were harsh, but she stayed focused on the goal. And I'm going to talk more about that in a video someday. But the reason I continued to do the videos and continued, I'm going to do a Passover meal on Sunday night with my Bible study friends, is because my mom would have let nothing stop in her, her or get in her way from sharing the love of Jesus. She had one mission, and she didn't let anything get in her way. And even though this week has been hard, this week has had no time and no sleep, I'm not letting anything stop in my way, because my mom would have wanted me to do it that way. So anyways, I got to get going, prepare our speech for her funeral, and say a prayer for us. Love you all. Have a great day. I'll probably see you in the next video, and I'm hoping to do that on Good Friday. Talk to you soon. Shalom, dear friends.